What's your carnal theory?
Hey there, you're listening to Carnal Theory, where we talk with experts from around the world to learn how taking command of our sexual story affects our personal wellness, sexual experiences, and relationships with ourselves and others.
Hi, everybody. I am Abba.
And I'm Amanda. And today on Carnal Theory, we're sitting down with Dr. Lexx Brown-James. Lexx is a sex therapist and educator focusing on race, sexuality, and relationships. She's also the author of The Black Girl's Guide to Couples Intimacy and These Are My Eyes, This Is My Nose, This Is My Vulva, These Are My Toes, which I really want to talk more about. She holds multiple master's degrees and has her doctorate of education in Human Sexuality from Widener University. So she really knows her stuff. And thank you for joining us today, Lexx.
Thank you for having me. That was such a good intro.
Thank you.
I like to give the full spread for everybody, so we have a lot to dip into in the conversation. So in today's episode, we're going to be focusing conversation around Lexx's work, but also around aftercare and the importance that aftercare plays into our sexual story. And we're going to kick things off with Lexx sharing her carnal theory for today's conversation. And as a reminder for our listeners, a carnal theory, it's something that's meant to challenge a perception or a presumption that we might have regarding the conversation on our monthly theme. And we'll dive into Lexx's carnal theory, and then we'll mention it again at the end of the episode to see if even during the course of this conversation, if your perceptions have changed based upon what we talk about. So Lexx, if you could kick us off and please share the theory that you've brought for us to consider.
Thank you, Abba. So my carnal theory for you all to consider is that everyone needs to have aftercare after every sexual event.
Yes. And as I've been kind of digging into some research for this theme, I've been questioning a lot, like, what is aftercare and like how I might expand my understanding of what that is. Can you give us a bit of a definition as to how you see aftercare being defined?
Absolutely. So aftercare in its broad sense, which was originally in the BDSM world, right? So the bondage, dominant, sadomasochism, submissive and dominant masochist world. And it was this idea that after a sexual scene that involved these enactments of power, that there needed to be a way for people to come back to themselves, to even out. So all of the good hormones that kick in, some people describe subspace and even a dom space when we're talking about power play. And to return back to like our kind of normal levels of functioning, aftercare took place. And aftercare can look as easy as bringing somebody a cup of water. It could be cuddling. It could be leaving somebody alone just to come back to themselves by themselves and naturally. But it really is talking about, in that realm and coming from that realm, the ability to be taken care of and have all of your needs met after a sexual encounter.
I want to underline having all of your needs met. I was having a conversation with another partner of ours, Kitty Pride, who we've had on the show. We were talking and we're talking about this theme, and she mentioned Cash App and your bills getting paid as a form of aftercare, because that is part of having your needs met. Like that could be a part of what aftercare looks like. And I was like, wow, yeah. Like I wasn't expecting, I have never heard that, connected.
I mean, you get to come and your gas gets paid. It's a win-win.
Exactly.
Sounds ideal. I'm wondering, do you think that aftercare can be a preemptive thing? Like, can it come before sex, even though we call it aftercare?
Right. I mean, yeah, pre-care, self-care, right? Engaging in care. I like to usually call things like that before sexual play, like it's extra lubricant, right? It makes the sex a little bit easier to have, however you're defining sex and whatever you're doing. it really helps, especially for femme-identified folks, right? So people who are socialized as femmes, people who identify as women, have a really horrible habit of this thing called spectatoring. And spectatoring is when people step outside of themselves. They're no longer in the moment of carnality, of physicality, of pleasure, but they're already living in the future. So they're saying, after this, I need to do my laundry, check my email, feed the cat, come back, take care of the kid. Meanwhile, their body is just doing things. And they're just like kind of watching these things happen. Okay, well, how much longer will this last? If I tighten here, will this end? But they're not actually enjoying the pleasure of what's going on for them because they're spectatoring. They're kind of just watching what's happening. So all of that pre-care actually is lubricant to get juices going, to get blood flowing, and to get the mind in the moment.
Mm-hmm. And is there a distinguishment between pre-care and foreplay?
So foreplay is kind of taboo nowadays because sex is so broad. It's no longer just like penile vaginal intercourse because, tag the patriarchy. So we're really deconstructing that. So what some people might say is like foreplay is actually some people's sex and as far as they want to go. So yeah, we kind of threw foreplay out and like, it's all just sexual play. It's just what type of sexual play you want to engage in. Kind of like a pizza. What are your toppings that you like today?
100%.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that's something that's really forgotten, especially because, for example, like pre-care for masturbation, we wouldn't necessarily call it foreplay, but we do have this like tendency. I think a lot of the things that people consider foreplay are just like what I would do in a masturbation session. Like, and then what do you call that? So then it's interesting. And I think it's forgotten that even when we're by ourselves, we need to take care of ourselves. What does it look like to like care for yourself in aftercare?
Right. So I think for different folks, it's of course going to be different boats, like for everybody, right? And some of the things that I love, some people, pee, whoever you are, if you own a urethra, get up and pee. Just please just clear out anything that could be there if you did some genital stuff. Yes, if you have a penis, if you're intersex, if you have a vaginal opening, you have a urethra, use it, pee. 1. 2, do whatever it takes to take your body and make it feel comfortable. Some people feel better brushing their teeth. Some people feel like they might want to shower. Some people just want to sleep. Some people want butt rubs and ask for cuddles. So self-care can also look like, ooh, I actually had a jagged fingernail. I want to go ahead and get rid of that right now. And so they want to clip and file their nails, for next time to make things easier. And then some people like to lotion or to re-lubricate or to apply lubrication to certain body areas like their genitals, because that might feel good. So it's whatever really feels good. Some people are just really hungry. Like, I want a sandwich. I'm going to have a sandwich and I'm going to have a nap. That sounds wonderful after, this whole self-engagement play situation or with a lover or lovers, whatever your situation is. So there's a lot of different ways, but it's really meeting some of those base level needs and then going from there. Maybe there is something, maybe you have to have a hard conversation or you need to do some work, but trying to get those base level needs first and then going to higher level needs because it gives your body time to return to the normal state that you were in before.
And you work with a lot of couples. You do couples therapy as well. I'm wondering if there are misconceptions on what aftercare is in conversation, or if it even plays a large role in therapy work.
But that is such a good question because people tend to forget that because they're not in a BDSM scene, that there needs to be aftercare. And for some reason, it's also the sub needs aftercare. If they are in a BDSM scene, that's not necessarily true, people. Everybody needs aftercare, hence the theory. So if you're a lover and you were together as a couple, maybe they need something afterwards. Maybe they want to rub down because they've been pounding their heart away. Maybe they want a leg massage or a foot rub, or maybe they want to be cuddled, or maybe they want to be validated that this was a good time for you and that this did feel good and that you do want to do it again. right? I specifically see this a lot in couples who are trying to conceive, so who are having a lot of sex on purpose during a lot of time. It can bring a lot of pressure to the intercourse and pleasure. And so sex starts to become like an obligation instead of an opportunity. And with that, I say, well, let's bring in some like, how are we taking care of ourselves? Let's not talk about our hopes of maybe this is the time we get pregnant this time, right? Let's maybe not even use or build up to ejaculation. Let's just have some type of intercourse and let's withhold ejaculation and then take care of just holding each other and being close after that, right? Let's do some deep breathing because maybe one partner is really anxious, and some holding and some resting assured. Sometimes I also have people do body validations afterwards. And that body validation is, when somebody might feel different about their size, especially because we're in a pandemic and some people have changed body styles and types. So some aftercare might be like, I really loved it when your body was on top of me and I loved how it felt. And getting that validation of like, oh, I don't have to end up in my own little like spiral of anxiety of was this okay? Because now my lover is validating for me that it was. And it was fun and they'd want to do it again.
I love the idea of body validation as a form of aftercare. That makes a lot of sense.
How, and I think this is especially a question about like newer couples or just newer sexual partners. Are there ways to interpret what the other person needs or what kind of aftercare is most beneficial?
Absolutely. So I think that there are some people who love rituals and like love whatever their ritual thing is. Before they masturbate, they always wash their hands. They always want to lay on their back. They always like the same porn clip or whatever it is, they have a ritual. Then there are folks that might become new to their lover and they're like, ooh, let's see how this goes. So one, laughing also counts as aftercare. Like, dude, you totally need me in the ribcage. Like, I took it in the moment, but I just want to let you know, like, ouch. Right? Whatever it is. Or like, oh my God, lover, one of us farted and I'm pretty sure it's not me. Right? So whatever that is. But for new lovers, I think it's a conversation you have before. Like, hey, what do you like to do after sex? Like, are you just going to roll over on me and fall asleep? And I'm just going to be like, oh, okay. Right? Or are you the type of person that's like super energetic and now after sex, you want to go for a run? I'm be like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to pee and then I'm going to go to bed. Right? So do you want me to bring you a warm towel? Or would that be awkward because you don't want wet towels in your bed? Like figuring out what that's going to look like for you all before you actually decide to jump in the bed or kitchen or couch or wherever you're going to be is going to be really helpful as part of that conversation around sexual play and what feels good for you all.
Yeah. And we've talked about this a little bit in terms of like bringing toys into the bedroom or, other lesser talked about elements, how to bring those elements in. You mentioned a few just there, talking about it beforehand. If you have any other suggestions, I'm curious to get them of how to start that conversation.
Right. So I think in the moment, I always tell people that your orgasm is your own responsibility, not your lover's responsibility. So it is not your job to get your lover off. Not your job. Your job is to help facilitate the process, right? Using whatever you like to use and you're ever comfortable using. Now, if you're a person who like, I really need this type of stimulation from this sex toy to like really just send me to my peak or to have my maximum pleasure, then talk about that. You can even talk about it in the moment. This is really hot and I'd really like to take this to the next level. I usually use this thing. Is it okay if I use this thing while we're together? Right? And maybe you're the person that's going to handle this toy because you know how. Or you ask them like, I would really love for you to use this on me while you're doing whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And that really skyrockets my pleasure because this feels so good. And I just want to see if I can reach this ultimate peak. Who's going to be like, I don't want you to reach the ultimate peak of pleasure? Nah. Now, also be mindful. If you're bringing out like a jackhammer dildo, that might be something that might be like a little intimidating for folks. And if you're bringing out some like super magic Swedish tool that has 17 buttons, like that might take a little bit of a learning curve. But if it's something that's simplistic enough, that's also going to bring you that extra pleasure, arousal begets arousal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only going to make the time hotter. And if they say no, because people do have the right to say no and that they don't want to consent to that, remember, it's them taking care of themselves. They're not rejecting you. They're not saying your pleasure is important. They're saying like, I'm kind of uncomfortable. I don't know if I would like to do that without going into all of those feels in the moment. They say, thanks for taking care of yourself. All right, let's keep doing this because this feels nice.
Yeah. Arousal begets arousal. I really, really like that. And again, everything you just said also applies to aftercare, because you can say, these are things that really turn me on, relax me, like help prolong the experience for me. Having that warm cloth or cuddling or whatever, that's just prolonging my pleasure. Would you do these things? Is like you said, who more likely than not, they're not going to be like, no, that's as much as I can.
Right. Or prepping like, hey, after this, I'm gonna turn this fan on because it's hot. There's a blanket at the end of the bed if you get cold, but I'm just gonna let you know I'm hot and I like the sweat to dry from the fan versus having to go wipe off.
Right.
So heads up, this is what I'm going to do. We can make accommodations to make sure you're comfortable too. And that's okay too, because you're establishing what your boundaries and your needs are.
Yeah. I want to take a brief detour to talk about your book. So I am really interested in learning more about your book, which is meant to facilitate, conversation between caregivers and children, which is, these are my eyes, this is my nose, these are my vulva, these are my toes. And I am all about children's books. I'm actually going to school for children's literature. I would love to hear more about what inspired you to write that book. And I have a feeling it will bring us back to this conversation of aftercare.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Children's lit. So I am amazed this book actually is as popular as it is. I am flattered every time somebody buys it or I get a little check for it. It was a postpartum depression project. So with my first child, who is now 4, I had postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. And it goes so undiagnosed, and specifically in Black communities, that I knew I had to get through it, but I was crying my eyes out every night from midnight to 3 a.m. because 3 a.m. is when my partner took over their shift. And I was like, I got to clean up my face before my lover comes in. But I would just cry and like catastrophize everything in my head, especially as a therapist. I have a privilege of holding people's darkest and hardest stories, but I also hold people's darkest and hardest stories. So I know some of the horrible things that people do to people. And so I'm just like, I brought a kid into this world that can experience that. And all of my cool, dope sex educator, sister sexologist friends are doing amazing things. And I'm at home covered in breast milk and baby throw up. Good use of your doctorate, Lexx. Good use, right? And so I struggled with some postpartum depression and anxiety. So when I got pregnant for the 3rd time, I was like, oh, we're not doing that again. This is what we're not going to do. So I worked on this kid's book because I wanted a book that I could talk to my kids about. Vulva was one of their first 3 words for both of them. And I just needed them to be able to see other people and people with different abilities, and the fact that not all kids will have hair, and some kids have double amputees and they're still kids and they still want to play and they still want to have fun and also know their body parts. I need them to know that not all trans people are going to have certain types of genitals, and that's fine. And not all girls are going to want to wear dresses. And so these little like touches, they're really just touches and like intros on topics. There's not a whole bunch of nudity. There's not a whole bunch of like, it's not like this is a kid's penis and this is a kid's vulva. It just shows you the general area of where they are. Like the kid probably has one of any type of genitals so they can know where the genitals are. But it really just kind of touches base on all of those. And it really helped me. So my oldest says, this is my book, Mom. Like, are you giving away my book when I was mailing them out? I'm like, no, your book is on your bookshelf. These are other books. But it really helped me kind of stay grounded and still produce something that was sex positive that I want to read to my own kids.
Yeah, I love that. And I think
Awesome.
that you touch on something so important, which is like in our society, we are like not using the correct terms for our body parts, which is absolutely nuts and makes us feel insecure and like not at home in our own bodies. And it's so, so, so important. And just, yeah, just the lack of proper sex education in our country is outrageous.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
only 17 states mandate medically accurate sex ed information.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh,
Something ridiculous. It's
17.
like more than half don't require it to be factual or something ridiculous. Like,
Nope.
and you know, I think each time we have a theme at My Sex Bio, it's related to sex and sexuality, but we also think about like, why wasn't this taught to us? You know,
Mhm.
why wasn't aftercare taught to us? Like, why weren't we taught to take care of each other? Why are we taught that sex is this like, I feel like it's either one of two extremes. Like it's either this like raw carnal thing that happens and then is like over and then you go your own ways, or
Mhm.
it's like this crazy romantic like life altering experience. And in none of any of that, which is like the two extremes, did we ever get told how to take care of the other person.
Mhm.
So not only
Mhm.
is it unrealistic, but it's like not healthy. How do you think that we can change that? And do you see a possibility to address aftercare in sex education?
Oh my gosh, yes. So sex education in my realm and the sex educators that I work with, we move towards a pleasure-centered sex ed,
Yeah.
right? And so right now, sex ed is very STI and STI phobic and orgasm focused, right? And I think, Amanda, you're getting to it. It's like after the orgasm, we don't know what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like after you come, it's just like, okay, what now? Where are my panties? Like that doesn't have to be the case. So we try and do pleasure focused. And so what's pleasurable to you? And sex doesn't necessarily have to end at any type of peak or orgasm or when a penis is no longer hard. That doesn't necessarily mean sex ends or begins based on hardness or firmness of an erection. It doesn't have to. We can stop doing that. Every erection doesn't have to be used either. And ejaculatory response and actual like orgasm feelings are two different feelings that typically come grouped together, but they're two different feelings. They can actually happen asynchronously. People don't know that. People are like, no, like once he comes, it's done. I'm like, who said they were having sex with a penis in the first place? A. B, does the rest of the body go limp and is unable to move once the ejaculation happens? No. So how come sexual play has to end there? So we're redefining it to center sexual pleasure. And so that sexual pleasure means that that pleasure can keep going after orgasmic feelings. And it doesn't necessarily have to be carnal in nature. It can be, this just feels nice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see relationships between people changing when they look at sex differently? When there's a more encompassing definition of sex? Like in the therapy part, like if you change the definition of what sex is, do you see that affecting things?
Absolutely, Ebba. So once people kind of expand what sexuality can be, and usually I use the term of intimacy here. So because people just stop at sex when they think of sexuality. But when we term intimacy, so people start to realize, wow, we have a lot of intimate touches throughout the day that I really value. And even for myself personally, so every time my lover and I are in the car, we are connected in some way, shape, or form. Either one of us is like we're holding hands, we have a hand on the thigh, somebody's hand is like on somebody's shoulder or back of the neck, just in the car. And it's just something we kind of do unconsciously, but it's always there. And it's really nice to just be connected. And there's not an expectation of sex that comes with it. It's not like, oh, yeah, you're going to give me head now because I touched your thigh. Like, it's not like that. It's just like, I like touching you and I like to know that you're here. And I like having you here with me. And that feels really nice. So people do start to expand out what their intimacy looks like and get connected in all these different ways. And it feels really good to bring your lover pleasure, right? You bring your lover to like some type of climax. You're like, I did that. That was me, all me. I'm great. You help facilitate their process, but I'll let you take the ego boost, right? And you were able to do that. And it feels really good. It helps with confidence and sexual self-esteem. So yeah, it does build their intimacy. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I feel like you bring up a good point of pleasure focused versus orgasm focused, and like not, you know, I think of it as like a fear. I was basically raised in a fear-based sex education.
Mm-hmm.
Fear, like if you have sex, this will happen. And the thing that will happen are always scary things. STIs, which were framed as like a very scary, horrible thing that you never, ever, ever want, even though like most of us have one.
Mm-hmm.
Pregnancy, like when you're not ready for it. And what was the last thing I was thinking of? And pain, that you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna have pain if you have a vagina, that it's gonna hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just have always, until I was old enough to start, learning for myself and exploring what's good for me, did I feel not afraid of this like huge part of my humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's really important. And then when you center it around orgasms rather than around pleasure, there's like this sense of anxiety that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, um, I think with my partner, there's always this sense like if I don't achieve an orgasm for my partner, I have failed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's interesting that you say pleasure focused rather than orgasm focused, because I do think that when you focus on orgasm versus just pleasuring your partner, there's like this whole thing that you're missing out on, this whole possibility that you're missing out on, which I think is really beautiful.
Absolutely, right? That feeling of failure sucks. And I'm a millennial, I'm an older millennial. So I'll say millennials and zillennials are not built for failure. Like we have been taught that failure is the ultimate end of everything and it's the worst thing possible. It really isn't. It really is the first attempt at learning, but we feel horrible and like we are shit people if we fail at anything. So that, right, around sexuality and your partner, now you're reading tips and tricks in Cosmo, trying to figure out how to like do a lens spin and like all of this ridiculousness, right, to try and please your lover. So yes, and that centering on pleasure, because some people don't have that lifetime movie head throwing over the edge gush type of orgasm, right? Some people things just feel good and then it stops feeling good. And that's their orgasmic peak. Some people can have that over the edge push multiple times. Some people never get it. And they're like, am I defective? Am I broken? Like, no, you feel pleasure the way you feel pleasure. And I read about a study, it's like over 700 reasons why people engage in sexual play. Over 700.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of different ways that you might come back and revisit this play that will be successful. But yeah, it's what you're really getting out of it. Is your body feeling relaxed? Are you feeling connected? Is this something that a release could help with? Did you get to sleep a little bit easier? What does it mean for you to enjoy this pleasure?
Yeah. Yeah. And remembering that it's that full experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's the pre-care, it's whatever you're defining as sex, it's the aftercare part, which can elongate it, and or what you were first putting out as the definition, like support you to come back to a neutral mental or physical space where you can better move forward from it and not
Mm-hmm.
feel especially not feel depleted. Like you might not want to do anything if you're feeling like you're on a high.
Also
But
true.
yeah, but it's to make sure that you're not missing anything.
Right. And I think we're in such a rush in the world that like it's like, okay, we did this, let's get back on schedule, let's do what we're gonna do. And like aftercare doesn't have to be 2 hours. It can be 10 minutes, right? Before you have to go hop back on that work call or go do something else. It can just be 10 minutes where you get to feel your body and be like, bleh, this is great. I'm so comfortable right now. I really get to sink in this good feeling. And then you can get up and hopefully, have some energy to go do whatever else you need to do or to be primed for the next day.
Yeah. And I wonder if you agree with this. Also, it might not look the same every time. You might negotiate with your partner like, hey, I really need a shower with you after every time that we engage intimately, but like once a week, I also need you to like cuddle and hold me tightly for like 20 minutes afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It really is in that moment. So maybe this was a hot and heavy session and you're like, I'm just really thirsty. You just get me water with like a lot of ice. Thanks. Right? Or I don't want to sleep in a wet spot. Can we switch? And you be in the wet spot this time? Right? So it really is okay. This is after we've done what we're going to do and I'm getting my breath back and my heart rate is slowing down. Can you just like stroke my hair for a little bit? That feels really nice. Thanks. Mm-hmm. So you do get to come back to yourself. Your eyes are a little bit more open, right? You're not panting and you're not like grabbing or clawing if that's not your thing at somebody. You're just going to kind of be. And I'm like, oh, that's what my toes feel like. Okay. These are what my hands feel like. Yes. Or, oh my goodness, that was such a great spanking. Can you just rub that area a little bit more? So not in arousing ways, but just because it's a little bit sensitive. I'd really like that as it's smart. Like those things are considered aftercare too. Applying cream if necessary or a Band-Aid if necessary. All those things can be aftercare too.
Yes. Yes. I thank you so much for joining us, Lexx. We really, really appreciate it. As we close out the conversation, can you just state the carnal theory that you brought for us one more time? And
absolutely.
Everyone can take it away and consider it more through their days.
So I want you to consider that everyone needs aftercare after every sexual event.
I'm convinced. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. And we hope that this episode has given you something further to reflect upon and reach out with any of your questions or insights on our Instagram page at Carnal Theory, or you can reach out to Lexx and check out her work at lexsexdoc.com. It's a little tongue twister. That's Lexx with 2 X's, or on Instagram at lexsexdoc. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
Carnal Theory is produced by My Sexual Bio. Our sound design is by Audrey Cohane, and our theme music by Min the Universe. My Sexual Bio is an educational platform built to empower people like you to take command of your sexual biography. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, and Spotify at My Sexual Bio. Visit our website and join our e-letter at mysexbio.org and support our work by joining our Patreon. Thank you.